Why do you lose the support of your own employees? How is it possible that someone turns up in your organization every morning, leaves every afternoon or every evening, or when you have a shift system to different times, they always deliver the services promised, and still, after years and years of cooperation, communication, and collaboration, they decide to not support you anymore in the future. And I don't mean that they leave. Some of them might leave, but that's not the point here. The point is that they might stay and still do not support you. How is that possible? And of course, we want to look into reality, not only have some random example. We want to look into reality and see how is this possible to happen. So what happened during the last week? Because we have some bad news in the beginning. We have some really good news afterwards. So there is at least one real major big news which I never expected to happen. And then, of course, we will look into how we can see the problem in our organization, and then we will look into how can we do it better. So aspect number one, Armin Laschet, that's one of the people who want to become the successor of Angela Merkel, said that all these meetings of all the different MPs, and especially when the important ones meet, they should do it in person again. That is, of course, the statement we are waiting for, that in times where digitization or digitalization, depending how you want to say it, is already stagnating, and in certain countries, especially in Germany, it is way too slow compared to other countries. He said we should meet on site again. Well, first, you're legally not allowed to. Second, you give a really bad example to all the people who have to work from home, even to the ones, I'm not talking about the ones who like to work from home, I'm talking about the ones who have to work from home against their will, because some people like to return to the office. But the worst aspect of this is that you give the typical example of an outdated person in the organization. 1 year into the pandemic, and a senior leading political person is still unable to get their point across in an online meeting. Maybe you should have gotten some help before, but not only that might be a reason why people decide to not support you in the future. If we look into other aspects, for example, the WEF, the World Economic Forum, they now did their new calculations about equality. The last calculation, when will we have full equality? And this means full equality globally. The last calculation was from 2019. And there they said it takes roughly 99.5 years, which means our generation will not see it. But now, of course, due to the pandemic, people are focusing more and more on their personal benefit. And now the new calculation is that full equality, that's the new calculation from the year 2021 now, equality will happen in 135.6 years. So what do you think when you look into your workforce? And now do not look at your best friend, do not look at your senior management. Please look especially at people who have the average job, the average or even below average income, and people who might struggle a bit, especially women and minorities. And now, how can you think that they should support you further when they see that equality, which already is far, far away, is even further away? What will this do with these people? And we can also look at completely different examples. You know that we are going to have World Cup in Qatar 2022, and I don't know how it is with you, but I watch a lot less football than I did some years ago. I am a football fan of Hamburg, which they do not even play in Bundesliga, and don't talk about the last weekend. But we also heard, maybe you have heard that, especially people in the UK will know that Germany lost against North Macedonia. And I'm not going to talk down on North Macedonia. I know that they're 62nd, I think, on the world ranking. But every team can have a bad time. And every team can have a great time. So it happens that sometimes the team you do not expect suddenly wins the game. And there is nothing wrong with that. This is why so many people like to watch football, because you have way more surprises than in any other sports, which creates emotions. But I always liked that it always was focused on having a good football game, and that stopped a couple of years ago. Maybe in a couple of years, maybe even way more years than I personally like to admit. Maybe you remember when they suddenly started to before a game started, they started the show on TV 2 hours ahead of the game, giving you one piece of irrelevant information after another, then a bit of a game, and afterwards another 2 hours of discussions and different viewpoints, and an interview here and an interview there, and an argument on this or on that, or what should they have done. And it all seems to be pretty irrelevant, and that is due to the fact, and especially this applies especially to the German team, where Ilya Greshkovitz, a well-known change expert, made a great remark that Die Mannschaft, which translates the team, which was a marketing approach from the German Football Association DFB, the Deutsche Fußballbund, they tried to label the German football team as some cool marketing item, and that was one of the moments where they really lost me. And I am not one of these people who say I am against change. The problem is that was the moment where I really looked into where do people actually spend money, because they always say it's all about the fans, and when you look into different football teams, the people who actually watch the games, they bring in about 10% of the money, 10 to 15% depending on which club you follow. Most of the money is brought in by marketing or TV licensing or whatever else. It is not about the game anymore. And I quite frankly lost interest in watching them, not only because I have the impression that people are not interested anymore to play for their national teams, because it's not well paid enough anymore. People were not interested in the aspect of football. People simply said, we create a marketing mechanism, by coincidence they play football, and afterwards we generated money out of basically nothing of value. And people will realize when your organization, I'm just going to give you a couple of examples. Maybe you heard statements in your circle of friends or in your own organization where people said back in the days, and now I'm not talking about the people who denied to change. I'm talking about the people who really make a point, where they say, back in the days, we had leaders who stayed for 15 years. Now they're here for 2 years and go for the next better organization. Or they say, formerly we were focused all about value. Today we only sell cheap. Or they say, back in the days we had professional development plans. Now it's only about squeezing out everything you can get from an employee and then sending them off and getting the next one in. And these are changes where people simply deny to support you and your organization's future. And of course, by the way, this is only getting back to football. I didn't even address the issues with World Cup and Qatar in 2022 and the human rights violations, and all that is the reason why I am not going to watch World Cup 2022. So, are there any good news? Because I don't want to become too negative here. I know, as you can hear by this charming accent, I am German and we tend to be quite negative about a couple of things. However, criticizing normally leads to making something better afterwards. And there are good news, even in sports. So Major League Baseball, for example, announced, and Major League Baseball is the largest sports franchise when it comes to baseball. The Major League Baseball All-Star Game will not take place anymore in Atlanta, Georgia. And of course, this might have many reasons, but they were very explicit about why they moved it away. And they moved it away because they did not support the limitation of voting rights that Georgia put in place. That is a very strong and very rare political statement from someone who runs a sports franchise. Often people say, oh, don't make a political statement. It's not about that. Which is not only spineless, but also you say, oh, I know it's a bit of injustice, but you know, we can make money anyway. And this is not how any sustainable organization works. Having a political point of view is part of what makes you a sustainable organization. And of course, immediately the Republicans were talking about cancel culture. Maybe you heard that amazing word, amazing in high commas. Cancel culture. I'm going to translate that to you. Cancel culture is what people say when they have no facts, no evidence, no proof, no reasoning, and actually no argument to offer. So they go for cancel culture, which translates, back in the days I could say that, why are you offended by it right now? And people sort of feel that they can't say it anymore, but they really like to say it. Some people really like to be discriminatory or racist or anti-Semitic or whatever else they want to put on the table, which is completely unacceptable. Back in the days, they got away with it, and now they can't. So they speak of cancel culture, because if they wouldn't use this marketing term of cancel culture, they would need to say, oh, am I not allowed to be racist anymore? And the answer would be, no, you're not. So when you look at these news, there are still very few and rare moments where good leadership is delivered. Well done, Major League Baseball. And now we get to the main news, which is actually astonishing to me. Astonishing in a very positive, fascinating, and exciting way. This podcast now exists for nearly a year. Next month in May, it's going to be 1 year. I aim to reach out to 10,000 people, and we are now strongly going towards 25,000 people. And that is not only amazing, but also we now have, of course, looked into the rankings. And I never expected to be in any ranking because we don't have any paid advertising. The only thing I do is I create this podcast, I put it online, and as soon as I put it online, I share it on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and that's it. And then I just wait for what happens. And I just now received the news that it went to the top 100. Certain episodes went into the top 100 in the very competitive category of business and management. So, for example, in Germany, my podcast was ranked 42 once, and in the UK, it was ranked 84, which is in the top 100. There are hundreds of thousands of podcasts, especially in the English-speaking world, and especially the category of management is very competitive, maybe the most competitive category of all of them. I never expected to even make it to the top 1,000 due to the reasons I told you. No marketing, no advertising. It must be all you. Maybe you shared it somewhere, maybe you told someone about it, which I really appreciate. So it is time for me to say thank you. Having a podcast which was ranked within the top 100 was something which I truly never expected. Thank you very much for that. And of course, I hope that you will support this podcast in the future. So thank you very much in advance for every recommendation, referral, social media sharing, etc. And of course, I am now following one of your wishes. It was a wish which people sent to me via email, not once, not twice, but quite a number of people suggested that. And I now looked into it, and I agree with you. We're going to change one thing, which you actually suggested. Many people said, many of whom are also part of the expert letter. If you're not part of that, expert-excellence.nb-networks.com, and then you can sign up for that. You get a free article and the podcast, and even more. We now have a video cast on YouTube as well. So when we had this expert letter, we always had the idea there will be a Monday podcast, a Tuesday podcast. Monday is the interview, Tuesday is me, and on Wednesday it's the expert excellence letter. And people simply said, that's too much. People said, I have time when I know that everything is in one place. So why can't we make it all in one place? And that is exactly what I am going to do, which means we will put everything in one place. So the 2 episodes per week will become one. You won't miss anything, no worries, because some people say they like the interview a bit more. Some people say they like my take on it and my information a bit more. What you will have is you will have one show on Wednesday where you first have me talking about different aspects, and then you have a guest. And I promise you, I will keep on interviewing interesting guests who have something to say, who have great stories to share. I will not have an interview every week when there is no person available who really has something to say. I will not start to do the random interviews of just ranting my best buddies and friends. So no worries about that. So from next week on, there will be the Wednesday's expert letter. And on the same day, you have one podcast show. You can focus everything on Wednesday, and it will be out every Wednesday, 5:30 a.m. UK time zone. So you can focus on that. Thank you very much for your support, and thank you very much also for supporting, recommending me, sharing on social media, etc. in the future. But of course, now we get back to why employees do not support you in the future, or why you actually already lost their support in the past. And now we're going to look into several other problems and challenges here. So one of the main tasks you have is to show people where is the overall goal. And of course, one part of the problem is when people have no idea where the goal is. As soon as you tell people, just keep on doing your daily work, people lose the sense and the feeling of identity in your organization. And that happened in many organizations, especially when people, and that's what I told you about what happened in football before, when people think or feel that there is no general concept of value anymore behind what your organization is doing. You basically have a bunch of people who have a job, senior leaders so-called, and they sell something which others produced, but they do not really have the idea that you have a common task. They do not have the feeling or idea of there's a concept of what we all do together. They do not have the slightest identity or feeling of identity that this organization stands for something. It is just a building where people go into, do something they were trained for, and then leave. They show up on time, they do their work, and they leave on time. And they won't stay a single minute longer unless you pay them or give them any other benefit, which normally means immediate reward, not reward in a couple of years. So when people think that the main task is not to create an organization, but also, and that's the third part of the problem, that there is some feeling of a hidden agenda. And a hidden agenda is never the word people directly use. People don't say, oh, I think there's a hidden agenda. People say something like, oh, I think all the managers here only stay here for 2 years because they actually want to go somewhere else. Or someone says, my department leader changes every 6 months because people don't want to work here. They are only here to get the next promotion, so I don't care who they are. I don't even remember their name unless they're here for a year. Or people say something like, back in the days we had something like values, but every 2 or 3 years they sell our company somewhere else. First it was owned by this investor, then by that investor, and they are selling us back and forth. And we're running left, we're running right, we're running forward and backwards. And every 2 or 3 years, something happens for no reason with no explanation. So as soon as people have the feeling of a hidden agenda, you will lose their support. And of course, when you now claim that a feeling is not a fact, you're right. However, the feeling was created by a certain behavior, and this behavior is the fault of senior leadership. It's not the fault of the people who work in a production facility in your organization. It's not the fault of the people who show up every day working in your offices doing admin tasks. It's not the fault of the market or the politicians or the world or any kind of environment, or as many people like to say, the market. Whatever the market might be, sounds like a bit of a cheap excuse. So when you have the feeling of a hidden agenda, it means people have seen misbehavior and wrongdoing by leaders. And that's why they have their feeling from, because they lost the trust. And of course, all these statements I just mentioned to you, these were statements people gave me during consultancy engagements, during coachings, or after I gave a speech, during one of their events, or during training sessions. Sometimes I have a mentoring program where people open up and talk about their feelings. And of course, when I have project or interim management engagements, I often see people for many months in a row, and they tell me, this is what I really think about this organization. And you have to act on that. We can have a discussion about that, happy to do so. But now we should focus on how can we do better. How can we do better? So step number 1, always focus on leaders instead of temporary management. There's one exception, but I get to the exception at the end. True leaders are the people who grow with your organization. And one aspect here is really important. Maybe you heard of certain people who have what some organizations call dual studies. So people say they work and they study 3-month university and 3-month working in the organization. And often these people cause conflict because they like to be taken very important. And often people who work there for a long time don't like this attitude. I remember when I talked to a young person, that young person was very upset because he entered a large organization, and this organization suddenly told him the first 6 months you're going to work in production. And he said, who do you think I am? I am studying at an elite institute. Okay, listen, so first, your elite institute is one of these privatized business schools, and these private business schools are focused on your tuition fee. Some of them are very good, many of them are not. But when you think you're something better due to your degree, reality will hit you hard. When you work your way up and you stay in the organization, people will always take you more seriously for a very simple reason. You know the business. Of course, now some organizations will claim it's not always possible to get people in and tell them you have to work on production first. Absolutely, I agree. These people have to deliver way longer in the beginning, that they really understand the business, and they should be in the position of learning, not giving commands or orders out, especially in the beginning. As soon as you understand the business and people support you, you are an accepted leader, because as we learned from former podcasts, it's not only about the hierarchical pyramid, it's also about the social legitimization you have. And if you're not legitimate as a leader, people will not accept you. No legitimization, no leadership. So, of course, there is one exception, as I told you, temporary management, because I told you you need true and genuine leaders instead of temporary management people. There's one exception when people know upfront that this is a temporary management approach. And I just give you an example of a project which I helped with. We had a large organization, and they put digitization into their sales team. So everything went from paperwork to being fully digital, 100% paper free. And after that happened, after that was announced, they said, well, there's one problem. We need an enterprise resource planning software, an ERP software. Let's just call it SAB. I don't want to advertise for anything here. Let's just call it SAB. And they knew they don't have the knowledge on board. So the board of directors announced there will be a temporary additional IT leader, an IT manager, for 18 months. And when you announce it that way, then it's perfectly fine. When people know someone is here for 18 months and not any longer, that's of course acceptable. But what is not acceptable is that people say, oh, I love this organization and the dream is coming true, and 2 years later they're gone. Because people then know this was a lie. And of course, when you know how long someone is there, you accept that. When I have a training engagement, I'm there for 2, 3, 4, 5 days and then I'm gone. When I have a project or interim management engagement, then of course I'm there for a couple of months. Mentoring might be an hour or two or a day or two per month, quarter, year, whatever. But people know when is the person there and when is the person gone, because it was announced up front how this is going to work. So you need genuine leaders, true leaders who are part of your organization, except you announce it up front. When you announce up front there's a temporary engagement, people of course will accept that. Aspect number 2, always give them a clear goal. And when you don't have a goal with your organization, you have to look at what is the goal of your organization. And don't only look on KPIs, hard numbers, key performance indicators. These are important, no question, of course. You need to meet certain KPIs, because you might have heard you cannot manage what you cannot measure. But of course, soft factors are important as well. People who implemented ITIL, IT Infrastructure Library, and IT Process Management Approach, they know about CSFs, critical success factors. For example, work culture, employee motivation, culture of conflict, culture of innovation. How do people deal with each other? What is your meeting culture? What is the culture of, is it allowed to have vacations during busy season, etc.? Do you have a busy season or not? So all these soft factors are aspects which you also need to take into account. When you are a leader who only goes by numbers, you will fail, and the numbers will reflect on that, because suddenly a profitable organization turns into a not profitable organization. And of course, people will leave and you get a bad reputation on the market as a bad employer, which makes it even more challenging to recover from that. And aspect number 3, support of your people is always a midterm or long-term goal. And it's always that you have to work together. It's never short-term, and it's never a unilateral expectation or a unilateral statement. And that is something which many organizations have forgotten in the past. So just to wrap this up, you need true and genuine leaders who are part of your organization. You don't need temporary management, except you announce upfront that this is a temporary engagement. Aspect number 2, put in clear goals and develop clear goals, but don't only look at hard numbers, also look at the soft factors. We had the words KPI for key performance indicators, hard numbers, and CSFs, critical success factors for the soft factors of the business. And when you need the support, and that is step number 3, the support is always a mid to long-term goal which you have to agree on from both sides. It's never short-term, and it's never a unilateral expectation or statement. I wish you all the best implementing these steps in your organization. Of course, I have to again say thank you very much for the month and month of support. Please share this. Please keep on sharing it and recommending it as you did in the past. I am truly amazed that this podcast made it into the top 100. It is something as you can see, I am normally not lost for words, but here I really and truly am. So thank you very much for supporting this. If you want to hear even more, just a couple of weeks ago, I started a video cast on YouTube where we will have interviews, including video and slides and presentations and even more in-depth organization, all available for you and to you, and of course, at no charge. So I now wish you all the best when you implement these steps in your organization. And at the end of this podcast, as always, there's only one thing for me left to say. Thank you very much for your time.